Hey, it's Andrew Downs. I'm proud to support Three Beards Media, and I would love to work with you. If you need merchandise for your company, organization, band, softball team, whatever, I can help. From name brand apparel to promotional items, large orders or small, online stores, and more, I can help your brand stand out. AKC Marketing is local, based in Johnston, and we are an employee-owned business, so our costs are low and our turnaround times are fast. But most importantly, we give you personal service to make sure you get exactly what you're looking for. Email me at andrew@akcmarketing.com or find me on social media, and let's make some cool stuff together. Now sit back and enjoy this Three Beards Media podcast.
This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes, and if you're not down with that, we got 3 words for you. Like the podcast. Nailed it!
Would you like to sample some of my nuts?
Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Old Man Strength, brought to you from the AKC Andrew Downs Studios and sponsored by Revelton Distilling Company, Dan Douglas at Greenberry Realty, and Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage. I am your host, Chris Shipley, along with my partner in crime, Aaron Wall. Aaron, we've talked before, it's Old Man Strength, but you don't have to wear your glasses like that and actually look like an old man.
If I didn't, I wouldn't be able to see the screen in front of me. I can see a string bikini from 600 yards fine without glasses. 3 feet in front of my face, blurry. So, just kind of the way it is. But how are you?
Not bad. Not bad. Happy New Year. 2020.
Yeah, Happy New Year. It is almost that time. Speaking of which, obviously, the holidays. I have the best holidays. Let me tell you why.
Yeah.
I don't have to travel anywhere. I don't have to go house to house. I don't have to do shit. Because when you live 2,000 miles from your closest relative, it's impossible to make anybody happy. Because if you go to one, they're mad at you. If you go to your wife's, they're mad. The other family's mad at you. Like, why do you went to them instead of coming to us? And for years, we tried to rotate and all that, Thanksgiving, Christmas at one, Thanksgiving at the other. And when we lived in Texas, we could kind of get away with that because we could drive. Well, now trying to fly 3 people either to Dallas or to Kansas City is cost prohibitive.
Yep.
So I have a great excuses to not have to do that anymore. And so my holidays are fantastic. Sit at home, nice and chill. You, on the other hand, have to travel.
No. We traveled to Harlan the weekend before, and then we made an impromptu decision to travel to Winona, Minnesota to see Tyler and his wife, my oldest. We decided to drive the day after Christmas. Got in the car, packed up the presents. It was just me and Stacy. We drove north. We got just north of Mason City. I don't know if you're familiar, but I'm sure a lot of listeners are familiar with the Diamond Joe Casino rest area right north of Mason City. So we pull off to go to the rest area. I got to use the restroom. I get off and I get at the stop sign, and then I hit the gas to get on to the little overpass that goes over the freeway and then into the rest area. And the car proceeds to not want to run right. It's like revving high and not engaging, and almost like I slipped it out of gear. I actually thought I had hit a button on the gear shift that took it out of gear. So I was like, what the hell? So I put it in park, and then I put it back in drive, and it didn't go anywhere or wouldn't drive right. So I turned the car off, turned it back on, still didn't see the thing. So I leapt it over to the rest area, hit the OnStar button because at that point the engine light was on. Bear in mind, it's a 2023 Chevy Traverse, 13,000 miles. So we've only had it since February. So we hit the OnStar button. They did a diagnostics, said that the transmission needed service. So I called the tow truck through GM. Luckily, we have GM service. They were there in 20 minutes, but I had to call like 3 dealerships to see if I could take it to a dealership because it's under warranty. I'm not taking it to some podunk guy that's, not going to cover it under warranty.
Right.
And 2 of the dealerships either didn't answer or they were like, oh, we don't have anybody here until the middle of next week. I'm like, great. So I finally called this other place and they're like, well, if you can get it here today, we can at least try to take a look at it. So we got it towed to that dealership in Clear Lake, Iowa. And the lady had maybe 20 minutes and she comes out and she's like, they have this, it's not necessarily a recall, but it's like a notification that's been going out to the dealerships that these Traverses with this make and model and year is having some filter problems within the transmission and they're breaking and causing problems. So she was 90% sure that was what was wrong with the car. Good news, it was covered under warranty. Good news, they partner with the rental car company, so we were able to rent a car. Bad news, the car's going to sit up there for 2 weeks while they wait for parts and people there to actually get off vacation to fix it. So currently our Traverse is sitting at a dealership in Pritchard at Pritchard Chevrolet in Clear Lake, Iowa, and we had to drive this Nissan Rogue back home and didn't get to go see Tyler. So we're going to reset and hopefully when it's ready to go, we can make arrangements to go pick it up and then go see Tyler up in Winona. But we were 2 hours from home, 2 hours from our destination, and we were driving home and Stacy goes, it's a damn good thing we decided not to drive to Orlando to go to that bowl game because that would have sucked even worse.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. So that's my holidays.
It would sound like mine were better.
They were. Yeah, it was all good. We made it home. All right. We're going to bring on our guest who was at the bowl game, which is the reason why we pivoted and did tonight and not last night because he had a flight back. It was going to be pretty quick. Pretty close. The gentleman that is our guest tonight is got a very, very unique and story that touches a lot of people. Aaron and I, as dads, I'm sure are very touched by it. This gentleman kind of became on the radar during the UCF game when he was walking around as Darth Vader during the blackout game, and his story became pretty well known. So with that, we're very, very honored to welcome Troy DeJoode to the podcast of Old Man Strength. Troy, just want to point out, I'm wearing my We Believe shirt, ordered it the day after I saw your story. My wife was like, what are you ordering now? And I told her, and she goes, okay, well, why don't you order me one too? So,
awesome. Awesome.
Troy, welcome to Old Man Strength.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yeah, well, let's get it out of the way. Let's talk about the bowl game real quick. How was the trip to Orlando?
The trip to Orlando was great and made better by a win. Would have been nice to be a little convincing, but hey, I'll take a win anytime. The atmosphere was incredible. There was great. A lot more Cyclone fans than I expected, to be honest. But yeah, it was a good time. So, yeah.
Awesome.
I've only ever been to one bowl game.
We have been to, I don't know how many. My son and I happen to be, so we're also Disney World people. And we did Christmas at Disney for a lot of years. So last time they played in this game, which was the Camping World Bowl at the time, my son and I happened to be down there for Christmas anyway. So we extended it 2 days, caught that game. Of course, we got demolished by Notre Dame that year. So this game was a lot more fun. So, yeah.
I went to the 2000insight.com bowl in Phoenix.
I went to that. I was in my, it was pretty early in my career, I think, and I couldn't get away from work. I literally flew in. I was on the ground in Phoenix 36 hours. So, yeah.
I've been to one bowl game. It was last year's Memphis Bowl, so I don't recommend that one at all. That was not any fun. I mean, it was fun up until the game.
Right.
Good time, but
yeah.
And then I saw they were 79 degrees this year. I was like, that's BS, man. That's not fair at all.
Yeah.
I will be going to Ireland next year, though.
We're working on it. everybody wants to go. We're just figuring out how to make that happen. So,
yeah, we're flying in on the 13th.
oh, okay.
And going over to Galway and spending a week on the eastern side, and then coming back over to Dublin for the weekend to catch the bowl game, and then flying out on Sunday after the bowl game. So,
well, you talk about some serious trips now in the last few games. I mean, you had the Big 12 championship game in Dallas, people going to that, then the bowl game, and now the first game is in Ireland. And now I'm hearing people are thinking about making this little trip to Arizona in mid-January to hit the back-to-back basketball games. It's a lot of traveling for some Iowa State fans, man. They went to Maui. I saw that Maui was packed too. So
it was. Yeah, I don't. I guess it's better to have those hard choices than to make it easy and be like, yeah, they're they're no good. We'll sit at home and watch it. So yeah,
went plenty of years where I wasn't prepared to go watch a Big 12 championship game or a bowl game.
Right,
so
right.
There was a lot of lean years there. So
exactly.
Well, Troy, I give you a super brief introduction, but why don't we start with why don't you tell us a little bit about where you grew up and where you're from?
So I grew up in Cedar Falls. My dad is a aerospace engineering graduate at Iowa State. Actually, I was born in Florida. 2 weeks after I was born, my dad lost his job, and we landed back in Ames. He landed with a graduate assistantship. Ended up getting a master's degree. So I lived in married student housing when I was 0 to about 2. And then a brief stint in Ohio at my dad's first job, and then we were in Des Moines or in Cedar Falls for until I graduated high school. Went to Iowa State. I have a degree in electrical engineering. From there, I was never an engineer, and went back. I went to law school at Eastern Iowa University in Iowa City. It was the cheapest law school that I got into, and a good one. So I had to take the top 20 ranking over my loyalties. I did somehow buy season football tickets my first year and never used them once. I did have a bottle of urine thrown at me going to law school through the tailgate lots. Essentially, I don't think someone liked my Iowa State backpack I had on as I was biking to law school to study on a Saturday morning. Graduated from law school. I spent a year in Florida practicing law, sort of fell backwards into a really great job in Cedar Falls. I was there for 8 years, where Carson was born. Then we moved to Ankeny in 2006. My second son was born, and then Claire was born in 2009. We were in Ankeny. I was in Ankeny till a year ago, October. I got remarried January of 2024, so just coming on a year.
Well, happy anniversary.
Well, we're not there yet, and she asked if there was
anniversary. How about that? I'll just say anniversary.
Yeah, no. It'd be happy for me if she lets me make it that long. So, yeah. So that's the thumbnail. So
let's circle back a little bit because I'm always interested in stories and people's choices and things like that. So you graduated from law school and then you went to Florida for a job.
Yes. Well, I chased a girl to Florida.
Okay. There's always a story.
No. I followed a girl. We're not telling any stories no one knows already, so I can tell that. I followed a girl. We quickly figured out that life's really hard when you're young and dumb and don't have any money, but some of us, I had a great job. I actually sort of stumbled upon a job with a guy who was a Grinnell grad and a Drake law school grad, had a little small office, lots of work, learned a lot. I wasn't there not even 9 months. And we had split. My girlfriend and I had flown home to surprise my dad for his birthday. And while we were out, I ran into somebody at the local utility company that I had interned with as an electrical engineer. And he was now the CEO. And they basically said, hey, we think we could use a lawyer on staff. We don't know what we'd have you do, but why don't you come down and interview? And the next day I went down in my sort of scrudgy khaki, well, it was winter, so I sure had jeans on, but and 2 weeks later they called me and made me an offer, and I moved back home and lived in a duplex 2 houses away from my parents, which is not what I thought I'd be doing at 24 or whatever I was.
Yeah, at least you weren't living in their house.
Well,
That's right.
no, that's
You were
true.
living on the other side of the duplex. That's
Yeah, right. Exactly. Or in their basement.
right.
So yeah, that's
Because that sounds like a nightmare, by the way. I remember when I got divorced, my mom and dad lived, I had a big house, and it was just me and my 2 kids part-time. And I remember my mom saying one time to me, my dad had said, you got that whole big basement. We could just move in and rent the basement. And I was like, yeah, that's not fucking happening.
yeah.
And he's like, well, why not?
Yeah.
I was like, well, first of all, I'm 30-some years old. I'm single. I'm not living with my parents. My mom sure as hell is not living here.
Yeah,
we wouldn't bother you. We wouldn't bother you. I said, have you lived with her before? Because I have.
Well, my parents had a basement I could have rented. You could see my house from their front window, and we just basically agreed neither of us would come over without calling ahead. And that worked out really well.
Smart
so,
move.
Yeah. So, anyway.
Oh, that's funny.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Oh, that's funny. I was 17 when I left home to go to Iowa State. I hadn't even turned 18 yet before we moved in at Iowa State. And that was, my folks were still living on the eastern side of Iowa, over near the Quad Cities. So it was like 2.5 hours from Ames. And that's the closest I've ever lived to them since. They're now a couple thousand miles.
Okay. All right.
So you're back in Iowa. Let's talk about when you met Heather.
Actually, I had an assistant at work who was in like an aerobics class with her, and Heather asked the people in that class, "Do you know anybody?" And she knew me because I was her boss, and she introduced us. And we got married in 2003, and Carson was born in 2004, and owned 3 houses in that time. I'm not sure how that worked, but back in the day, everybody changed houses all the time. Chase was born in 2000. Well, so I had worked. So I'm I like to say I'm a recovering lawyer. I did a lot of labor and employment law in my early days, and I also oversaw human resources. And there's a point when your lawyer, certainly at 5 years, maybe a few years earlier than that. Sorry, I'm getting notification. Okay, a few years earlier than that, but in that 5 to 7, 8 year range where you become sort of worthwhile. And I was fielding a lot of offers. I was really transitioned to a lot of human resources work and not a lot of law. And I kept thinking, well, I went to law school. I should really do this. Heather got laid off from Maytag at that time when she was pregnant with Chase. And I got a really good job offer with Ruan Transportation Management Systems in downtown, the big rusty building, downtown Des Moines. And so we moved to Ankeny in July of 2006. And we're there. Chase was born in October of 2006. Claire was born in November of 2009. Yeah, and so that's how we ended up in Ankeny.
So, if you're comfortable with it, I'd like to talk a little bit about
Sure.
what happened and
Sure.
so forth. I rewatched the game day segment today,
Yep.
and I noticed that there was a clip in there from WOI TV, and I believe now I remember this story
Sure.
vaguely because especially when you said you lived in Ankeny. So
Yeah.
this happened outside of Ankeny, correct?
Yeah. It happened at the on the road that goes back to Tones
Oh
and
yeah, okay.
off the Ore Labor exit there. There's a Casey's there now. I don't think it was Casey's then. And then you take the road past all the hotels to Waterfront, Outback, and then Tones. My son Carson had a karate class back there in one of the little strip malls, and they were on their way there at 3:15 for a 3:30 class, and a guy coming from Tones had a seizure driving home, swerved around 5 parked cars at the stop sign, and barreled into the intersection with a half-ton truck going 55 miles an hour and hit them. I was on my way home from work at 5:15 when I got a phone call. I always say that my employees will tell you that if your name is not in my phone book when the phone rings, 99% chance I don't answer it. And this time I did, and the woman said, this is, I don't remember her name, but I'm the house nurse at Mercy. Are you driving? And asked me to pull over, and I argued with her a little bit, and that was just south of the Corporate Woods exit. I got under that, pulled over. She said there'd been an accident. Heather and Claire are here. They're both in critical but stable condition, and we need you to come here immediately. I asked what was going on with Carson and Chase. She said, I don't know. I assume they're at blank, but we need you to come here immediately. And so I got off the exit at Ore Labor. If you've ever tried to get off any exit in Ankeny at 5:15 on a Thursday, it was backed up into the interstate. It took probably at least 3-4 cycles of the light to get me. The guy in front of me did not run the yellow. I remember it like it was yesterday. I was so mad. And so I sat there. And now I know that, it was really lucky that I was distracted, because if I had looked to my right, I possibly would have seen the fire trucks, at least. If I may have seen the van. And as I was going back over the interstate to get back on the interstate, my phone rang, and the woman said, "My name is something. I'm the house nurse at blank. Are you driving?" I said, "I'm not effing pulling over." She didn't fight me on that. And she said, Carson and Chase are here. Carson is in critical condition, and Chase is awake and alert and in the emergency room, and we need you to come here immediately. Which is sort of the part where when I talk to groups about it, in particular groups of parents, like that's sort of the point in time when I always say, what do you do when you're faced with the impossible decision? Like, right. We need you, I have 4 family members on 4 different floors in 2 different hospitals, and where do you go first? And in my case, I say a lot of the first 72 hours were taken up by kindergarten logic. Mercy called first, so that's where I went. And that is as simple as it was. I told the lady that I had to go to Mercy first. She said she understood. She asked if there was anybody I could send. Heather's parents live in Cedar Rapids. My parents and my brother live in Cedar Falls. I said I would call them, but it would be a while. And she said, Chase is alert and awake and scared. Can you send somebody? So I told him I'd call his buddy's parents, and one of them would come. And so I did that. I got hold of two of them, and two of them ended up going, and I went to Mercy. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's what an impossible choice to be able to even wonder where to go. So,
yeah, it is the first of a lot of decisions in 72 hours that I look back on, and I think, looking at it in the abstract right now, it's such a hard decision, but it really becomes at least for me, in the moment, I don't remember it being a hard decision. I look at it now and I think, oh wow, what an incredible hard decision. But at the time, it was okay. I'm just going to go with this. This is the answer. It's simple. It's kindergarten logic, but that's what we're going to do. They don't give you. This is sort of a theme of when I talk to groups about it. They don't give you any time, so it's throughout that whole first 4 days, no one ever says, hey, you can do A, B, and C, but, go ahead and take your time, get on that thing, Google, that thing kids have, Google, and figure out what you want to do best. They literally are like, A, B, or C now.
Sure.
And we need to know. So I went to Mercy, went in, they took me up to see Heather. She was in the neurotrauma ICU, and went there, met with the doctor. I'm an engineer and a lawyer. They're using words I've never heard before, and I went after quite a while. They said, sorry, I have a dog running around the house, apparently.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay. It's a very big dog. We have 5. So at any given time, there's a dog running in our house. But, we had the doctor basically said she's suffered a diffuse axonal traumatic brain injury, and now we're going to wait. And this is one of the things that always is remarkable to me is the number of times that was the medicine, that was the treatment. And you can imagine, as parents and husbands yourselves, like that is not what you want to hear. They could have told me they needed to put any of them on a helicopter to Johns Hopkins or somewhere, and that would have been better than hey, we're going to wait. We're going to sit around and twiddle our thumbs. And
right.
Shortly after that, I like to say a 12-year-old social worker came up. Feels like all the social workers in the hospitals are 12. And she was like, hey, I need you to come upstairs and see Claire. So we went up, saw Claire. They basically said she had suffered blunt force trauma. And she was unconscious as well, but not breathing on her own, and that their plan of action was to wait and to watch for 24 hours to see if she started breathing on her own. And not too long after that, they called and said, hey, we need you to come over to blank. And this was the first point in time where I realized that everybody thought I was an invalid. The hospital literally would not let me drive myself. They drove me to blank. I went into the emergency room. My buddies were there with Chase. Chase didn't talk a lot because his brother talked all the time. But I got there, he started talking right away, and he was basically like, Daddy, he was 3.5 at the time. He's like, Daddy, I want to go home. And that was like the longest sentence he'd ever said. And that's when that was the first time that I lost it. And I was like, yeah, I do too, bud. I do too. Luckily, he had a sprained ankle. He had 6 stitches behind his left ear. He was sitting at the driver's side, far rear of the minivan, over top the wheel well, essentially. And he had stitches from when the window had blown in. He ended up with a neck brace for a little while. He didn't have it right away. But kids get injured, I was told, in impacts like that by the torque on their bodies. And the torque is the force times the distance from the spin point. And Chase was sitting on the spin point, so 0 times whatever force is 0. Not, that's basics of it. So one officer described it as he was sitting on a supercharged sit and spin, which I see they now have in stores again. So he was relatively lucky. He was in the hospital for a week. And then they took me up to see Carson. They're like, hey, we need you to come up there. I went to see Carson. I remember getting off the elevator, and it was like I had the plague. Every nurse, every phlebotomist, every janitor dove into every room they could to avoid interacting with me. They took me to Carson's room. They obviously, they used the picture in the game day story. I provided it to them. That's I think the first time we've publicly shown that picture. And then they took me out to the hallway, and I met with my friend Dan. Had come with me from Chase's room, and Dan is a doctor, happened to be a doctor, and the trauma doctor and then the neurosurgeon sort of surrounded me, and they said, Carson has suffered a cervical dislocation. We're going to do an apnea test, but we need to tell you that he's is really strange, because before, I like to say, there's this thought bubble above my head, like the comics, and they're starting to tell me, like, we need to tell you that Carson is a prime candidate to be an organ donor. And, the father in me, that thought bubble is quickly filling up with words that my mom wouldn't be proud of, but, why aren't you trying to save my kid? And my friend Dan just took me by the arm and basically said, they can't save him, but he can save a lot of people. You need to listen to these people from the Iowa Donor Network when they get here. And that was, all of that was after 5:15, and at 7:30 that night, I think I signed off on Carson to be an organ donor. He had a broken neck, he was brain dead, and there was no chance of survival. The next day, Claire hadn't started breathing yet either, and so around noon that day, I made the same choice for her to be an organ donor. And that's like, that gets us through the initial 24 hours.
Let's take a break here, and then when we come back, let's talk a little bit about their foundation and Star Wars and Carson's love for Star Wars and how that led you to do what you do at Halloween and things like that. So let's take a quick break here from a couple sponsors, and then Troy, let's come back and let's continue that story. Okay.
All right, great.
Making great tasting bourbon requires the perfect combination of ingredients, conditions, and time. The longer it rests, the better it tastes. Revelton Distillery's new single barrel bourbon is made from 80% corn, sourced 100% from Iowa farmers. And unlike mass-produced bourbons, each barrel of Revelton's single barrel bourbon is unique, proofed on when it tastes best. As they like to say, it'll be ready when it's ready. And to ensure the highest standards of quality and flavor, owners Rob and Christy Taylor oversee the production and bottling. Every single barrel. Iowa born, Iowa aged, Iowa bottled. Try the new single barrel bourbon from Iowa's own Revelton Distillery. ReveltonDistillery.com.
When energy meets precision, anything is possible.
I'm Carter Hawley, the Chief Energy Officer of the Iowa State Cyclones. I'm full of energy on and off the court, but nothing gives me more energy than helping families find their dream home. And that's where Green Beret Realty comes in. They're more than just realtors. They're a team dedicated to getting things right for you and your family, just like we get it right on the court.
No basket. Foul's on the floor before the shot. Out of bounds.
Come on! Can you believe that? You can't take that away from me.
That call was absolutely terrible. Are you guys cautiously trying to be this bad? I mean, does your mom not love you?
Have you seen how old my partner is? My back hurts already from carrying him all night. And I've heard enough out of you.
So you're gone.
Fine.
Jim, are you blind? Basket's good. We've got a three-pointer. Sometimes it takes a team to get the call right. And when you're buying a home, you want a team that makes all the right calls. That is Green Beret Realty. And here's the best part. When you buy or sell a home through Dan at Green Beret Realty and mention this ad, he'll make a donation to the We Will Collective, helping student athletes like me thrive on and off the court.
That call's so easy, even we can make it.
Green Beret Realty, because getting the call right means everything.
All right, and we're back again. We thank our sponsors for giving us the opportunity to tell stories like this. So Troy, let's talk a little bit about Star Wars, because it's something that I've passed on to my kids. So let's start off with what was Carson's favorite movie, and other than Anakin, who was his favorite character?
So Carson, I like to say that Carson came at the sort of the perfect age where they were rebooting the cartoons at that time. So the Clone Wars cartoons, so they were really targeted at kids his age. And they were fun for me because they provided a backstory that we really hadn't gotten.
Sure. No, I get it.
And so he was really into the Clone Wars cartoons. There was a Clone Wars cartoon movie right before that, and he loved the clone troopers at that time when they were the good guys still, and he loved Anakin, but he just loved Star Wars, and I think the basic sort of story of I think it's too simple to call it good and evil. It's complex about good and evil and family and loyalty and stuff like that. And that always really resonated with him. So he was into it. And it really took no effort on my part to get him into it. So he, that's all. I mean, he went through a phase where he did Thomas the Train, like I think everybody does. But then when he hit Star Wars, that was it, and it was Star Wars all the time. When they called about the game day, and we can get into that later, but they're like, "Well, would you happen to have some pictures of Carson like with the Star Wars shirt?" And I was like, "Yeah," because he only owned Star Wars shirt. That's not a hard ask. That's not a hard ask at all. So yeah, it was a great, and it provided something that we could do, and really both enjoy and both bond over and talk about and that sort of thing.
So were you a big Star Wars guy before?
I was, yes. Yeah. I mean, the simple answer is yes. I had, I mean, I was a Star Wars guy when I was a kid. The first movie I remember seeing is we went to McElroy Theater in College Square Mall in Cedar Falls to see The Empire Strikes Back. My dad took us, me and a buddy. We went to that. I had all the action figures when I was real little. To this day, there was a Woolco, which is sort of the predecessor to Walmart kind of thing in the College Square Mall that went out of business in about 1984, 85 maybe. And to this day, I can remember they had just wall to wall Return of the Jedi figures on clearance for $0.25. And I would not be if I had an inkling of an idea, I would be a rich man today if I had picked up. They had a peg full of Yak Face, which now is one of the hardest to find.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was, and then when I got to law school, I kind of got back into it. I read, they have before Disney bought them, they had an expanded series of books. I read all of those.
The Thrawn series.
Yeah, the Thrawn series. I read all those.
Yeah.
So I felt a little betrayed when Disney wiped them all off the face of the earth. But,
I so wanted that.
Yeah. So
that's a whole other episode. That's a whole
that's I could do. Yeah. But Carson loved it. He loved to. We read it. We watched it. He was full of questions all the time. Very imaginative. I tell the story in the piece, and it's very, very true. Like he thought before it. Now, I always, as parents, you can really appreciate this. You always exist on this razor blade of, how honest do I want to be with my kid? No, you're not an NBA player. Okay, I'm going to crush your dreams at 12.
Sure, right.
Or how long do I play along with that and be like, yeah, chase your dreams? Well, likewise, Carson literally thought he thought the Force was real, and like he thought the reason he couldn't make the lightsaber jump was because he didn't believe. He thought that if he believed big enough, he could do some crazy Force assisted jump and flip and stuff like that. And so we had to have a few discussions about don't jump off the back of the couch. He used to jump off the couch, and his sister would be in this little saucer, and he would jump between her and our black lab, and he would say, don't worry, sis, I'll save you from the evil Darth dog. And then he would pummel the black lab with the lightsaber. And we had we had a yellow lab and a black lab that were two of the best dogs ever, and they just laid there and took it. And but yeah, he loved it. It was something that he could really sink his teeth into and be very imaginative. So yeah, it was great.
So 10 years ago, is that right? You purchased the Darth.
Well,
let's talk about. Let me ask you this way, because I want to do it in a fun way too.
Yeah.
What's the reaction when you tell your wife, "Hey, I'm going to buy this Darth Vader outfit"?
So,
because I know what my wife's reaction.
So I actually started with, I had like a pseudo that I had put together. I had at that time in probably 1996, before I got out of law school, I had the helmet, and it was a two-piece, probably the fanciest one you could get on the market at the time. So I didn't have to ask anybody about that. And then I had sort of put together this pseudo junkie back then, and then I lost it all except for the helmet as I got out of law school and I started being an adult, and then we had gone to a Halloween party, and so I'd sort of recreated it, but it wasn't anything real except for the helmet. And then, the crash happened in May of 2010. So now it's almost been almost 15 years, but in October of 10, like I was like in particular because Carson's birthday is in September, Chase's is in October, and Claire's is in November. And when all my kids were in like elementary school or would have been, back to school, I always said started this like 3 months of just really hard time for me because like birthdays happen and yeah, that's one thing. But what killed me about back to school was you'd get on Facebook and there'd be all the kids that Carson went to he never made it to kindergarten, but all the kids he went to preschool with. And they'd be on the front step and, you know, the boys would all be wearing kind of the same thing and they'd have the same backpack and, you know, whatever. And the thing that I always say about back to school, it just hits so hard because like you could look at those pictures and be like, yeah, he'd be doing that. Like he'd have that Nike backpack that everybody else had, or he'd have, you know, that same sort of shirt. He'd probably be into the same whatever. And so that's, you know, that starts mid-August back then. And then sort of his birthday hits beginning of September. And by Halloween, which he loved, the month of October, he loved Halloween. It was like I was really struggling. And one day I said to Heather, you know, I'm going to go to the store and I'm going to buy just a cheap Darth Vader costume. And I'm going to hand out candy. And I'm going to do, full-size candy bars. We're going to be that house. Like, this is like something that I'm going to do. And it's really just for me. And so I did that. I literally went to Walmart or Target. You know, you could still get them because the shows were in the theater, but it was, you know, better than the kind of thing that came in the box in the 70s, but not very good. And then I did that. And she was cool with that. And then I did that the next year. And at the end of Halloween that following year, I started like, okay, I'm gonna look for there was a step up, and I looked for that on clearance, and I bought that. And just over the years, that's how it went. And it became very much pieced together. The one thing I had that was sort of legit was that original helmet. And I did that. You know, I got divorced in 2018, moved into another house in Ankeny. I have people, if you look through all the comments on social media, I'm not saying you should do that, but there are people in there that say, we live on his street in Ankeny. He's the full-size candy bar guy. And so, but every year I sort of updated this or that, or, you know, I started taking them out. I kept it all in a box. I'd take it out October 1st, start trying to figure out, you know, and I add boots one year and I didn't like the boots. So I bought another pair a couple years later. And then, this year I had a decent sort of, actually what I wore to the game that day, had a decent Star Wars or Darth Vader sort of onesie, actually, with a built-in chest plate, but the chest plate had gotten broken over the winter or over the last year. So I found one online that I'm not sure if it got 3D printed or what, but it was actually really nice. And so that was my upgrade for this year. And then when I pulled it out, I also, the helmet, something had gotten on the eyepieces and I could no longer see out of the helmet. So I bought a new helmet, and with the intention, and like I said, I got married it was a little over a year ago. We moved to her place outside of Nevada. We don't get any trick-or-treaters out in the woods here.
Sure.
So we had planned to go to our friends in town, and then the whole game started. that was when this whole thing sort of went up like a hyperbole. I don't know what the right word is. Anyway, it just took off and kept going.
Let's take another break, and then when we come back, I want to talk about the foundation, what the foundation does, and we'll get wrapped up because we got a basketball game here in about.
We do.
Minutes, so
we do.
So let's get a word from Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage, and then when we come back, we'll talk about the foundation. I want to talk about how Game Day reached out to you, and then we'll get wrapped up here. So we'll be right back.
Whether you're buying, selling, or refinancing your home, or if it's simply time to renovate the one you're already living in, you need an experienced mortgage professional to help you analyze your financing options and to make sure the closing goes smoothly. And that's exactly what you get when you call Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage. Kyle's experience and expertise, coupled with Wintrust's rates and programs, ensures you'll get the mortgage that's right for you. You may even qualify for down payment assistance. Before you reach out to a realtor, call Kyle and get pre-qualified, empowering you to start shopping for the home of your dreams. Call Kyle at 515-473-0546. Kyle Lehman, Wintrust Mortgage, 515-473-0546.
All right, and we're back with Troy DeJoode. Viral Darth Vader, I guess, is what we'll go with, Troy.
That works.
That's the word we're going with.
Yeah.
So Carson and Claire. Oh, go ahead. Aaron, go
well,
ahead.
I think you should probably go to. I think in order we'd go. How did the ESPN piece come about? Because you, as probably most of the people listening know about this story already, and you put it out on Twitter and all of that. After you got the reaction on Twitter from the post from, I believe it was the athletic department.
Yeah. So I came home that night and we got home really late. We tried to drive through Taco Bell. That was a terrible idea.
On many reasons, I would imagine.
Right. Not just because of the delay, but we got home and I started thinking about like, wow, that was really amazing. Carson would have loved it. He would have loved, like I said, he just loved people being happy. And so I started thinking about it. Didn't really, and I started thinking, I wish I had pictures. And some friends had sent me some. I got up the next day and several people had sent me the athletic department Instagram post and in X post of me walking and said, hey, like people that know that I do this on Halloween were sending it to me saying, hey, is that you? Like, is that you? And so when we had started, and my wife was like the one who said, hey, like you should really tell people like you're not, because I had this thing I used to say, like, whenever I'd see a kid crying and scared of me, I'd kneel down, I'd take the helmet off, and I'd say, hey, it's just an old guy with a really crazy hobby. And she said, you should really write something and let people know you're not just an old guy with a kind of crazy hobby. And so then that's how I wrote the X post. I actually had to figure out how to do a thread because I did not thread them together. And X is terrible because you can't edit. So that's, and so I did that. And I got a call from Quad Cities Times. They wrote an article. And then there was actually the very first thing I got was from Andy Fales, who did a piece. They were out in the afternoon, like a few days later, did a nice piece. And every time this would happen, like I kept thinking this was going away. And then Travis Hines at the Register wrote what I thought was going to be a page 3 of the sports page. And, that Halloween day, a Thursday, I think it was, I get a call from Heather at 8:30 in the morning. And she says, I'm on my way to work out, and I stopped at Come and Go, and you're on the front page, and it's like 3 pages long, and so it just kept building and building, and somewhere in that sort of I got a Facebook message, I think it was, from a gentleman by the name of Danny Aruda, with a senior producer with ESPN, and he just said, "Hey, we saw the post. We'd like to talk about doing a feature piece. When could you talk?" And we made arrangements to talk. I think the next day, and I remember thinking, this is like your buddies back in the 90s prank calling you and being like, "You won the lottery," it's like, "Oh, come on." So I did a little.
Jim,
yeah, exactly. Yeah. I did a little Google research, and I was like, oh, this guy is like, he's legit, and like, he's one of the best. Like, this is not some junior intern.
Sure.
And we talked on the phone, and what I thought was going to be a sort of exploratory, maybe there's a story here. It was like, no, like we want to do a story. We want to come out on Halloween. He flew in from Florida. They sent in a couple of camera guys in a van on Halloween. They came and filmed for an hour and a half or so, maybe 2 hours at Trick or Treat. Then they came to my house. It took them 2 hours to set up all the lights and everything. They interviewed me for like 2 hours. Michelle, my wife, for probably an hour. They interviewed my son for 45 minutes. They went to Heather's house, set up again, interviewed her for an hour or so. And then they came and met us at our tailgate and shot an hour and a half or 2 hours of footage there. For 90 seconds of that footage got used. But they came out. I like to tell people that he's as good at what he does as he is better at what he does than I will be at anything ever or ever have been in my life. He's a master storyteller. I could do a side by side with the piece, and there is a piece in there where I say 4 sentences and they seem seamless and they tell the story, but they are 4 sentences from entirely, they are separated by minutes and minutes of footage, but he's sort of seamlessly molded them to tell the story, the important parts of the story. It was a once in a lifetime experience, and they were incredible to work with. I didn't get to meet Jen Latta, who did the narration, because she, as they put it, they really wanted to come on Halloween, and they really wanted to be there for the tailgating to film. And normally the narrator, whoever that would be, in this case Jen, would typically come along, but she's part of the game day crew, and they were in Happy Valley. And ask any of your Hawkeye friends how easy it is to get to Happy Valley. Right. It's impossible, right? So no offense, unless they were putting,
we don't want any game day hosts at Jack Trice any longer, not for a while.
Right. So unless they were putting her on a private plane, they were not. She was not getting here. So, but her narration and her part of the storytelling, like I said, it was a incredible experience. They told the story better than I ever could have thought it could be told. They really captured sort of the organic growth of that day, which really started out, as I told Dan, the night before, there was no plan. Saturday morning, when I said to my wife, maybe I'll take the the costume along. It was in a box on the table. That was the extent of the plan. I didn't even know if I'd put it on. We barely had room for it. Like somebody had to carry it in their lap. And yeah, and then it just sort of took off, and it just kept going and going and going. And then I couldn't, when we saw how many people had seen the post on X, and my wife said, you need to write that. I wrote that. And they captured it as well as I could imagine.
Well, it was a very well done piece. It was very good. So
yeah.
I tell you what, this is what we're gonna do. We normally do a segment here, Troy, called the STFU segment, which is basically a funny segment where Aaron and I have to shut the F up and let you talk and say whatever you want. It's a semi-sponsored segment where we encourage people to donate to the Young Women's Resource Center in honor of Steph Coppey.
Love it.
So this is what we're going to do. We're going to play a little message from Steph, ask people to donate, but instead I'd like for them to donate to the Carson and Claire Foundation. But then when we come back, you can tell us a little bit about that foundation, okay?
Sure.
All right.
Donate to both, people.
Yes, you can donate to both.
Hey everybody, it's Steph Copley, the woman behind the STFU segment on the Old Man Strength podcast. When I told the guys I wanted to sponsor this segment, they recommended that I make a charitable donation instead, so that's what I did. I chose the Young Women's Resource Center in Des Moines, Iowa. They're a nonprofit that supports, educates, and advocates for girls and young women ages 10 to 24. Their whole goal is to make sure that these young women become strong, self-confident, and successful. And if you know me at all, you know that aligns with my goals as well. If you're interested and would like to donate, check them out at ywrc.org and donate today. And remember, don't forget to STFU and listen every once in a while. Thanks.
And we're back. Troy, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Carson and Claire Foundation?
Yeah, so we were like a lot of families in Ankeny. I don't know how many years it was after the crash, but it happened when my son Chase was basically moving into Carson's bedroom because Carson had an ensuite bathroom. And we went in there and we really hadn't touched anything, but there was a bookshelf full of books. We were like a lot of parents, like of all the things, if my kid wanted a book, I bought the book. And it might have gotten read once or twice or three times, but we found this bookshelf just full of books that were not abused at all. And that's how a book should be. A book should be abused. But we were talking about what to do with them. And it was really Chase that basically was like, well, we were talking about giving them to kids. And he was like, well, what if we give them to kids and they just end up on someone else's bookshelf? So we should give them to teachers. So that's kind of our primary activity is we fund teachers, libraries in the classroom. We try to partner with teachers who are new, teachers who are changing grade levels, teachers who libraries have gotten old. We have a partnership with Scholastic Books, the old book fair, and that's what we do. We do a few other things. We do a similar thing with activities. A lot of coaches. We haven't done as much recently in that realm, but Carson loved books, and by getting books into the classroom for teachers, we know they'll be read multiple times in a year and multiple years, hopefully. And we're in a very big foundation. It's, I think you put it up there. It's Carson and Claire, carsonclaire.org. The Young Women's Resource Center is a fabulous outfit as well, though, I have to tell you. So you will not hurt my feelings giving to that either, especially because I think Steph is a recovering lawyer also.
She is, yes.
And She's moved on. We all do. But we do. That's how that activity started. Was the first couple of years we actually did a book like exchange. Like we told all of our friends on social media, we're like, hey, we're collecting books. If you've got a kid who's outgrown books, bring them to us. And I took thousands of books to the elementary school, and it got to be so hard physically. And now with our partnerships with Amazon Business and Scholastic, and we could target what teachers need. And we do some other things. We like to do some things. Carson was a big sports kid. So in the past, we've collaborated with some coaches at some programs that maybe lacked the school resources. We collaborated with a cross-country coach one year. She had a kid who needed tights because of her own personal family, so we've done a lot of things where it's really about being involved and improving the situation. But books is the key. I currently have a garage full of Legos because we started that as well. We were trying to collect all these unused Legos, and I had people bringing me boxes and boxes of Legos. And our intention was to do a Lego giveaway, Lego sale, kind of garage sale thing. And that was in February of 2020. And COVID hit. So, and I haven't been able to figure out what to do with those. But we keep it small. We try to help teachers get books into their classrooms that they can share repeatedly over and over and over. And that's the extent of it. And it's all because we figured out that, Carson had this shelf full of books that, and they didn't get read because he passed away, obviously, but they didn't get read because we just had so many, and he had his favorites. His favorites are actually sitting on a shelf in my bedroom right now. I didn't get rid of those, but the ones with the masking tape with his name on it that you sent to preschool, and you want to make sure you got back. So that's it in a nutshell.
Well, Three Beards Media just made a donation to the Carson and Claire, and we invite everybody to join us. We just tweeted that out with the link to the donation. Foundations and charity are something that Aaron and I are pretty passionate about here at Three Beards Media. It's something that we work on throughout the year to support. So it was an honor to talk to you. Thank you very much for coming on and letting us hear more about Carson and Claire. So
thank you. I appreciate it. Love what you guys do.
Well, thank you.
Quick, rank the Star Wars movies. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, Empire Strikes at the top. Empire Strikes Back at the top. I would be an old guy with a OG bias, so it would go Empire, Star Wars, Return, and the rest is just. Although Rogue One is pretty solid.
I was just gonna say
it's a top 4. It could get into the top 3 depending on the day. And the best scene ever for the nostalgia and the excitement is the end of Rogue One, Darth Vader scene that ties seamlessly into A New Hope. So that's my 12-second analysis of.
I would second that with Luke Skywalker saving Mando in the Mandalorian series when he shows up.
That's solid nostalgia right there. Absolutely.
That was a total geek out moment.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, everybody. Appreciate you guys listening to another episode of Old Man Strength. We have another episode coming up next week with Mike Draper, the owner of Raygun, the founder of Raygun, is going to join us to kick off 2025. Of course, you can join Marcus Pfizer, Brent Curvey, and Dave Larson on Side of the Storm this week. Ball Don't Lie. The 3 Blind Refs are coming back. And then next week, I think Billy and Willie are back in the workshop. So got a lot going on here. Check out all the pods on the Three Beards Media Network. Aaron, anything else?
No. Thanks for listening. Troy, thanks for giving us your time, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
We got 3 minutes to tip off. We did it. Nice job, guys.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Good
guys.
job.
Have a great night.
Go Clones.